I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York, and this is UN Insider.
Coming up.
We absolutely cannot afford to waste time on tactical delays or stonewalling.
Urgent calls for decisive climate action as the high-stakes COP30 conference winds down.
Food itself has become a weapon through deliberate starvation tactics, which we are seeing all too often.
Growing concerns over disturbing links between conflict and food insecurity.
So we have high expectations for the results of what we have been building as Indigenous peoples.
Amplifying the voices of some of the people most impacted by climate change. A discussion with Brazil's Minister of Indigenous Peoples. Next.
The UN's climate conference is drawing to a close. For the past 2 weeks, negotiators have been working to push forward an ambitious agenda designed to help keep the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement in reach.
Now's the time to roll up our sleeves, come together, and get the job done.
A sense of urgency loomed over the second week of the climate conference as negotiators put in long hours trying to build consensus. The goal is an agreement that reaffirms the 2015 Paris climate deal and addresses some key sticking points in the areas of climate finance, trade measures, and pledged emissions cuts. The pressure is on to make this conference one of action and implementation.
O tempo das promessas já passou.
The time for promises is over. Every additional fraction of a degree of global warming represents lives at risk, more inequality, and more losses for those who have contributed least to the problem.
Menos contribuíram com o problema.
Andre Correa do Lago is the president of the COP30 conference. My colleague Mike Walter asked him about some of the key issues in the fight against climate change.
There are pockets out there of hope, right? I mean, is that what keeps you going? Because so much of the, I think so much of the coverage is like, oh my God, this is a climate crisis. What are we going to do? It's terrible. It's this train that's coming at us. We can't stop it. A lot of people are kind of like frozen, thinking, oh, geez, what are we going to do? But there are examples where we're turning the corner in some respects.
There are very impressive examples. And I think that this is the news that we have to bring, because I believe that telling the problems that we're going to have with climate, which is very important because you have to tell people what's going to happen, but it is a very sad story. No, it is always bad news because science is bringing us bad news all the time. And the news we watch on TV are bringing bad news all the time. So we really have to try to transform that agenda into a positive agenda. So an example is forests. Yes, deforestation has grown, and deforestation is an enormous problem because not only it provokes emissions, but you eliminate part of what we have to capture CO2 that is in the atmosphere. But then, if you look at forests as the possibility of reforesting, to have a restoration of forests, when you restore a forest, that forest is the only scientifically proven way to eliminate CO2 that has already been emitted. So a massive reforestation can have an extraordinary impact and can help us in those essential years that we have ahead of us, which is like 7 years or 8 years, according to science, to really try to change course. So you look at forests as something negative now, you can see forests are a good solution. Agriculture is a good solution. You can also capture. It's a natural way of capturing CO2. So we have to change the perception of some of the things that are seen, oh, that's it, that's very bad, and show that we can do it in the right way. And I believe that we have massive examples now, massive examples. The case of China that you mentioned is incredible. Who would have thought that already in 2025, China is, which is the largest market in the world of cars, is selling more EVs than cars that are not electric. It's incredible.
From the Security Council to the briefing room and beyond, Xu Deja is monitoring the latest developments inside the UN. Deja.
Yes, Elaine. This week, the biggest development at the United Nations was the adoption of a new Security Council resolution on Gaza.
With those in favor of the draft resolution contained in document S/2025/748, please raise their hand. Those against? Abstentions? The draft resolution has been adopted as Resolution 2803, 2025.
The resolution endorses the US-backed comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict, welcomes the creation of a Board of Peace, and authorizes the board, along with member states working with it, to establish a temporary international stabilization force in Gaza. 13 council members voted in favor, while Russia and China abstained. Russia's ambassador Vasily Nebenzia told us the resolution lacks adequate UN oversight.
And we indeed are concerned with the carte blanche that we gave by that resolution to those who promoted it, and we have no guarantees as Security Council that the Security Council will be able to monitor what is happening on the ground.
But many other ambassadors argue that it is necessary to begin somewhere in order to solidify the fragile ceasefire. The Secretary General has welcomed the adoption, but how will the UN carry out its role?
Does the Secretary General think the UN can do more than the humanitarian operations?
Well, as I said at the start of this briefing, we're committed to implementing the role that has been entrusted to the UN in the resolution. That includes scaling up humanitarian assistance to meet the needs of civilians in Gaza and supporting all efforts to move the parties towards the next phase of the ceasefire.
So there will be a Board of Peace in that resolution. Has UN contacted with anybody to discuss whether UN representatives should be on that board?
We are not part of the discussions at this stage, but obviously we are prepared to play any role that is involved in supporting the work of this resolution, including ensuring that we can move on to the subsequent phases of the ceasefire.
And will this resolution make a real difference on the ground? That remains to be seen. Also this week, the Security Council had an open meeting on peace consolidation in West Africa. Sierra Leone's President Julius Maada Bio chaired the session, which focused on the Sahel region. Why is the Sahel so important to Sierra Leone? I sat down with President Bio. What do you think is the challenge in the Sahel region, and why it's an important issue for Sierra Leone, maybe even for the world?
They are under the grip of threat of terrorism. Jihadists who have created a lot of chaos, who continue to put pressure on the state apparatus. And they are not only a threat, they are threatening to security, but also threatening to dismantle the states in this area. It is incumbent upon us as the international community or the world, but first, we the neighbors, to make sure that we do not let that befall them.
He also responded to my question on Taiwan.
You know, some politicians saying that the contingency of Taiwan is a contingency of their own country. What is the position of Sierra Leone on the Taiwan question?
We have been very steadfast in our commitment to the One China policy. We believe that that is the way out at the end. And the One China policy is what we still support.
So Taiwan is part of China?
Correct.
So, which means Taiwan is actually an internal affair of China.
Correct.
And we'll have more from President Bio. Stay tuned. Meanwhile, on Wednesday, the General Assembly adopted a resolution titled Sport for Development and Peace, Building a Peaceful and Better World Through Sport and the Olympic Ideal, calling on member states to observe the Olympic truce during the 2026 Winter Games.
I wish to reiterate the message of non-violence according to the ancient Greek tradition of the Olympic truce. I would like to thank all the delegations that have expressed their support and co-sponsored this draft resolution in close cooperation with the International Olympic Committee. And I humbly urge all members and delegates to support this resolution and to set aside differences and divisions and come together in harmony in Milano Cortina next year.
What does the IOC President Christy Coventry think about the politicization of sports? What is your take on the politicization of the sport?
The power of sport is there to be able to really build bridges and to unite us. And this is what we believe in the Olympic movement. And so we are going to continue to ensure that we allow for athletes from every part of our world to come together in a peaceful manner to be able to compete.
Well, that's all from me for now. Back to you, Elaine.
Shidoja, thanks. There are dozens of conflicts raging across the globe, and many of them are driving food insecurity in their respective regions. This week, the Security Council received an update on the damaging link between conflict and food security.
Armed conflict drives acute food security in 14 of the 16 hunger hotspots worldwide. Last year, 295 million people faced acute hunger, 14 million more than the year before. The number of people experiencing catastrophic hunger has more than doubled to 1.9 million.
Let's take a look at some of the other issues on the UN's agenda. Jamaica is facing a $9.5 billion financing gap in the wake of Hurricane Melissa. The storm left damage equal to about 30% of the island's economic output. UN agencies and local organizations launched a campaign to help remove the debris from 2 years of war in Gaza. The fighting left more than 60 million tons of debris in the Palestinian territory. The world is becoming increasingly urbanized. More than 45% of the world's population lives in cities, according to a new UN report. Dhaka, Bangladesh is expected to surpass Jakarta, Indonesia, to become the world's largest city by 2050.
Coming up.
Today, the only war that must be won in the world is the war against hunger, poverty, and the climate crisis.
UN Insider.
Whether it's about your education, the home you live in, or the items you buy, your money has a story to tell. Because every business story is a human story. Global Business.
Indigenous people are known as the guardians of the Amazon. At this year's COP30, they were directly involved in the climate conference. I sat down with Brazil's Minister of Indigenous Peoples, Sonia Guajajara. Your country is hosting COP30 this year, and for the very first time, Indigenous peoples will have a seat at the table. Why didn't this happen before, and what are your expectations from the summit?
Eu acho que tudo é processo e a gente vem construindo essa participação indígena ao longo dos
I think everything is a process, and we have been building this Indigenous participation over the last 15 years of COP. Since I started participating in 2009, we have been working to increase this representation. And now we are expecting at least 3,000 indigenous people in Belém and 1,000 accredited for the Blue Zone.
Então nós temos boas expectativas em relação a
So we have high expectations for the results of what we have been building as indigenous peoples. We fought to have the largest indigenous representation at this COP in terms of both quantity and quality. We trained indigenous leaders who are already participating in events, who participated in the COP in Baku and the COP on biodiversity in Cali.
Como exercício para fazer esse diálogo direto com os negociadores.
As an exercise in direct dialogue with diplomatic negotiators. So we will also have direct participation in the negotiating rooms. I am chairing the Circle of Peoples, which has 2 international commissions, one for indigenous peoples and the other for Afro-descendants, local communities, and family farming. In addition to a process we carried out in Brazil to prepare and organize this indigenous representation in Belém through the COP Parenche cycle, a way of involving indigenous peoples in the COP.
Uma forma de envolver os indígenas com a COP. E aí nós esperamos muito.
And there we very much hope that we can already have, as a concrete result, an understanding by global leaders of the inclusion of forests and indigenous territories as one of the effective measures to mitigate the climate crisis. And the other is a financial mechanism that can guarantee a direct percentage for indigenous peoples.
Que possa garantir percentual direto para povos indígenas.
What are the urgent challenges for indigenous peoples around the world?
Olha, eu acho que hoje a gente vive uma situação que é muito geral.
Look, I think that today we are experiencing a very widespread situation, which is about exploitation and extractivism in indigenous territories. In Brazil, we face the issue of illegal mining in indigenous territories, illegal logging, land grabbing, and mercury contamination of rivers due to mining in these territories.
Do garimpo nos territórios. Tudo isso para além de afetar diretamente.
All of this, in addition to directly affecting the lives of indigenous peoples, destroys the environment and contaminates rivers, bringing disease not only to indigenous peoples, but to all people who use the water or fish contaminated with mercury from these rivers.
Contaminado de mercúrio desses rios. Então, nós temos esse desafio, né, que são as invasões para a exploração ilegal dos recursos naturais.
So we have this challenge, which is the invasion for the illegal exploitation of natural resources in these territories. But we also have a problem that I think is quite widespread, which is racism. There is racism ingrained in society that ends up casting doubt on our ability to manage. Today we hold strategic positions in the federal government, but the structures are not prepared to receive indigenous peoples and are unable to be flexible enough for us to come in and make the changes we need to build public policies. So I think that we are on the right track. We are getting there. Building, moving forward, but we still have a long way to go.
Estamos no caminho certo, estamos chegando, construindo, avançando, mas temos ainda longo caminho pela frente.
Countries with a lot of biodiversity often struggle with a balance of being productive while also protecting the environment and indigenous peoples. Has Brazil in the past stopped or said no to a project that would help Brazil, but rather protect indigenous people and the environment instead?
Eu acho que tudo é equilíbrio, né? É uma questão de equilíbrio. Eu acho que você pode.
I think everything is a balance. It's a question of balance. I think you can guarantee food production, for example, by changing food systems, making production more diversified with a variety of foods, especially because I think that, first of all, we have to think about what we eat, what really nourishes us.
E hoje você vê muitas monoculturas, né?
And today you see a lot of monocultures, large areas of monocultures, which are produced only for commodities, for export, and which don't exactly feed people. So if we think globally, as President Lula himself says, that today the only war that must be won in the world is the war against hunger, poverty, and the climate crisis. So we also have to think about how to change food systems so that we can really combat hunger in the world, and that with awareness, it's entirely possible.
Consciência é totalmente possível.
What are the outcomes proposed by Brazil at the UN recently at the Tropical Forest Forever facility?
É mecanismo, né, liderado pelo Brasil. A gente articulou a criação desse mecanismo.
It is a mechanism led by Brazil. We worked on creating this mechanism for 2 years, and we are now seeing here at the United Nations the main global leaders agreeing to contribute resources to this mechanism.
Países líderes globais.
The difference, in my view, is this guarantee of 20% going directly to indigenous peoples and local communities. This will help those who protect the environment to have the conditions and structure to continue caring for the environment, to continue protecting it.
Tenham condições e estrutura para continuar cuidando do meio ambiente, para continuar protegendo.
We are already in an almost irreversible climate crisis. If we do not shift investments to those who are actually doing the daily work of ensuring that the forest remains standing and biodiversity remains alive, we may not achieve sufficient goals to avoid the point of no return for tropical forests. So this Rainforest Forever Fund is an innovative mechanism, a catalyst for resources that will structure a concrete action agenda for what really matters in addressing the climate crisis.
Ação concreta para aquilo que realmente interessa para enfrentar a crise climática.
Minister Guajajara, thank you so much for joining us.
Obrigada.
UN Insider.
Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities, reinvent, find new opportunities, discover a path forward. CGTN, see the difference.
UN headquarters is home to hundreds of pieces of art. From sculptures to large murals, there are visual displays donated by member states throughout the building and on the grounds. Let's take a look at some of the standout pieces from Latin America.
The art here at headquarters is more than a compliment to the work we are doing here. I think it's an inspiration.
The divisive factors in international life so frequently command my full attention that I find it beneficial and reassuring to pause occasionally and think upon the harmonizing force of the arts.
Here at UN headquarters, we have more than 20 pieces of art or historic artifacts that were donated by our Latin American member states. They certainly make a bold statement and remind our visitors and our delegates what the United Nations is all about. War and Peace is a gift from Brazil, created by the great Brazilian painter Candido Portinari, especially for the United Nations. When delegates enter the building, they see the mural War. They see mankind in desperation, terrorized by the 4 apocalyptic horsemen. And when they leave the building after a long day of, let's hope, good diplomacy, they see the peace part of the mural. I would say it has certainly helped inspire countless delegates entering and leaving the UN headquarters. Kusikawa Sei consists of an indigenous canoe that brings ancient wisdom to our present. Sculpture is a gift donated by Colombia, created by the sculptor Mario Opazzo in commemoration of the role that the United Nations played in bringing to a peaceful end the civil war that had ravaged Colombia for decades.
The monument was made with the material used from the armament of the demobilized soldiers from the FARC. So it is a very symbolic monument which shows us how we can transform for better, transform for life, to protect life and not to destroy life.
The title of my work is Brotherhood, a theme within the spirit of this house, which stands for peace among the peoples of the world.
The painting Brotherhood is a gift from Mexico created by the painter Rufino Tamayo. In its center is a large fire, and around the fire is a group of people with interlaced arms. Tamayo told us that they remind us that there is only one race, and it's the human race.
I think that in order to achieve brotherhood, love is absolutely indispensable. I don't find any better symbol for love than fire, because fire gives us the warmth with which we have to unite.
The value of art is to remind us of our common humanity. And you walk around the building and you see these masterpieces, and you feel it's very important that we, maintain this world for future generations.
Art allows us to talk about the things that we maybe don't want to talk about, to express feelings and powerful messages in a context of war and violence.
I just want to tell you that I made this mural with love. And so I hope that it will serve as a sort of inspiration to everyone that looks at it and thinks in brotherhood just as I do. Thank you.
I'm Elaine Reyes at UN headquarters in New York. Thanks for being a UN insider.